I have to say now, I don't want to be in the middle of you boys, so
all right.
I just want to. No, I really don't.
Should we do that first?
Team behind Neds. I did have some questions, and they got kind of blown out of the water because it was 30% of what happened in the. You said 30% of what happened in the film is real, Peter. I'm hoping it's the first 40% of 40 minutes of the film. Would that be fair?
Yeah, that would be fairly accurate.
Or was there bits in there that you kind of mind, that you looked at and thought?
Everybody kept asking, was it autobiographical? And I'd always said no, it was personal, which was a phrase borrowed from Dennis Potter, who once said about Sign Detective that it was personal but not autobiographical. But they kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Is it? How much of it is? How much it isn't? So I came up with a figure of 30%, 70%. Then of course they say, yeah, but which part of it's the 30%? Which part's the 70%? Most of it is complete fiction. Some of the family stuff is in and around things that did happen and things that I heard as a child. And the rest of it, as I say, it's fiction. Right. There's a couple of bits. The stuff at school is I was held back because I had a bad big brother, and I felt unfairly punished because I was quite a swotty little kid, and I hung around with a middle class kid over the summer because I was told to hang around with. A teacher said to me, hang around with people of equal intelligence, which even at the sprightly age of 13 I thought was a bit elitist, to say the least. But that's what I did, and went to his door one day with a Provi check and a pair of football boots. He was at the window and his mother said, don't come here anymore, which absolutely blew me away. And on going back home, if I took a right turn, I would have avoided the swing park, but I took a left turn. Why I did that, I have no idea. Past the swing park, they jumped on me, they said we're going to do you in. They found out I was connected and they asked me to join them. And for the next year I was barely at school. I just decided this is a far more interesting place to be. So sadly it was also a more violent place to be.
Yeah. So Lenny, can I ask you the same question?
Sorry,
I'm pleading the fifth on this one. It's got nothing to do with me.
But how do, because you were obviously casting potential people that you kind of remember that are collected over the years. How did that work?
That made it my job so much easier, because Peter we went through each character. He would say, well, that's Mr. So-and-so from school. And I'd say, right, I know who that is. So I knew where the essence of the character was. And, so that made finding the people. Most of the gang were all amalgams of different guys that he ran about with and guys that I ran about with. So it was quite easy to find them that way.
So, go on,
the hardest one to find was obviously Connor, who plays the lead.
No bother.
Because when I got given the script, I really just laughed. It was originally one actor was to play both ages. So this guy had to start at 12 and finish at 16, and his journey's colossal. So I said to Peter, this is a 35-year-old, we need to play this. So I started looking for midgets. This was never going to happen. To find somebody with that maturity, it was just so difficult. Peter got the brilliant idea to split the characters, which for my end of things made things possible. It made the impossible possible by suddenly being able to have two boys play the same role. And then that allowed us to get Connor, who could never have played the younger John, but he plays the older John wonderfully, as you saw. Hopefully you all saw the same as I saw. The boy's a genius, as is the young boy. He did a great job, and they had a similar physique.
Which one did you cast first? Which one
Connor.
came first?
Connor.
Right, and then worked for the younger one.
Yeah.
And what did you see? What did you see in him when you were casting that?
They were asked to do.
Because he's not acted before, is that right? He's not.
None of them had. They had a very simple task. There's a line in the film, I don't know if you remember it, it's where he says, I don't want to fight you because I'd kill you. And I found that very poignant, and I thought if they can do that, they've got a chance that they'll maybe do the rest of the arc. So we looked at that one bit and asked everybody, we got a big bulky actor in to challenge them to fight, and they had to say, no, I'm not going to fight with you because I would kill you, and say it and mean it. Connor meant it. He frightened me. It was, and then we workshopped them for nearly 8 weeks. Nobody was chosen immediately. They were then shortlisted. Peter was given cards, like a deck of cards that he carried around for 6 weeks, and each night at the end of the day Peter had to sit and look and say, right, he fits here, and we did it that way.
So, because I think casting is absolutely crucial as well, particularly with young actors when they're not professional actors, they haven't worked before. So was there a point where you got in the film and you just thought, Christ, what have we done here? How did you get around that? How come they weren't spooked or freaked by that before?
The workshop process, we had a Saturday club that they called the Fight Club, where they were taught how to fight without injuring anybody. They were taught basic skills, no acting workshops. It was all team bonding. We did a lot of that. We had great fun. These were a nice bunch of lads, and they all got on with each other. And so when it came to filming, there was nobody really spooked at all. They were really quite just dying to go, dying to get paid.
Because I thought money plays a big part in acting.
What I thought was great was that attention to detail. There was one point, and I assume I'm wrong, but I'm sure I saw Fergal Sharkey out the Undertones in the toilet at one scene. He just had that look to him, and he just really capturing the moment.
If you look really closely, there's a pirate DVD apparently at the moment, so you can freeze frame it if you like. There's a few sort of faces that you see that you would have sworn were of that time. Right. You know.
And how important was that 70s to it? Because it obviously added to the budget.
It was expensive. A lot of the money went on costumes, cars. Cars are expensive. Finding locations where you didn't have all the park. Glasgow's changed so much, thankfully, in the last 40 years. Crap from a filmmaker's point of view, but from a social, political point of view, thank God it's changed. But it's changed almost unrecognisably. There's very few places you can find and actually pan round. Normally you've just got to lock your camera off and that's all you can look at. But in terms of the actual period itself, I didn't want any of that nonsense like, oh look, there's an MB bar. You know, I couldn't be arsed with any of that kind of stuff. It was to be evocative, it was to be more impressionistic rather than historically accurate. A guy dug me up the other night, nice fella, I met him in a bar, and he said, I enjoyed the film, but I've been in the Clenny all my days, and that was a Victoria dustbin that those kids were sitting in. And as I'm sure you realise, Peter, Victoria dustbins did not come into being until 1976. And I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, is your film not set between 1972 and 1974? So moments like that, and I said to the gentleman, no offence, I couldn't give a monkey's toss. My kids and I watch my language, because I was never ever interested in that. I never have been. Whenever I watch a period film, I'm not. If a film draws attention to that, it reduces itself. Whereas film, it should be there, and it should be as accurate as you can make it. But it really should speak to the here and now. History is how one generation look at another. That is what history is. It's what one generation find of importance in another. So if you draw too much importance to that, then the people who are looking at it become less interested.
It also takes you out the film, doesn't it? It also highlights that it's a film.
It becomes indulgent. It becomes it's bollocks, to be absolutely honest. You know, it's just indulgent. If it's all about how many buttons were they wearing in their shirt, and honestly, I couldn't care less. I really couldn't care less.
How important was it for you, Graham, as trying to capture in that mood and that period?
I think the worst thing was things like double glaze and satellite dishes, but I'm easy because I can just Photoshop and crop things out and clone, so painting sash windows and things, so it's much easier. So, but a nightmare for Mark especially was trying to find these places and get people to take the satellite dishes down and cover them up or chuck nets over cars that are parked in spaces that...
We got rid of most of them through CGI. Through computers you can get rid of satellite dishes. 5 years ago you couldn't do that.
So for me it was odd because I grew up in Glasgow right through the 70s, so it was literally going back in time. It was like a kind of flashback every day, walking out and thinking, God, the classrooms haven't changed at all, think it's a set, or the corporation bus pools have been white and gold, you think, and you think it's normal. That's the scariest part. But you slide back into that zone,
So was there ever a conversation you could set it some other time? You could set it in to save money and to
that got brought up a couple of times. It was never it was no interest to me, because the whole point of the project was a sort of Brechtian approach, which was, if you can look at history, you have a certain objectification of it, so you don't get tied up with the paraphernalia and all the rest. So if you set it in here and now, then you could we shot it 2009. By 2011, when you released the film, then the mobile phones the kids would be using 2009 would have changed by 2011. So it becomes about paraphernalia. So if you put something in recent history, I'm not saying, by the way, you can't look at the contemporary, but if this particular issue, if you set it in the here and now, it becomes distracting. Whereas if you give it, like all my kids described it as the old days, which obviously from our point of view is slightly offensive. It's like, so Peter, in the old days, or olden days as they called it, in the olden days, like recording obviously and needles and stuff was, the thing they found hardest to get grips with, and they didn't believe, was teachers smoking. They were all the kids in the film were convinced I'd just made that up. And it's like, guys, I couldn't make that up. Jesus, I'm cutting out the landlight. They were all drinking at the back of the class. I'm just showing the smoking. I'm even showing the drinking those bastards were doing.
The TV, there was a TV that had a slot. I don't know if there's anybody remembers slot TVs. We used to put 10p's in to get half an hour of TVs. They could not figure out what that was for.
No.
Not one of them. That was half the crew.
They really didn't get it. So, to put it in what I would regard as recent history for my kids was ancient history. Like I say, it allows you to look at the issues more clearly, in theory.
So how important was humour to it? Because there was incredible humour in there.
Hope so.
Audience was laughing. How important was that to your story when you were writing it?
I just like it. It's truth. It's reality. Some people find it hard to deal with. They found it hard to deal with in Orphans and stuff, and Magdalene Sisters. It's, why are you changing tone? Why is that bit funny? It should all be grim. It's a fair comment. It's not true of the reality that I know. Now, whether that's a peculiarly Scots thing or whatever, I have no clue, and I don't care. It's the reality of life that I've seen is that there is the possibility of humour regardless of circumstance, be it a funeral, be it a murder, be it whatever, horrific things. Whether it's a Scots thing, I don't know, or a Scots-Irish thing, or a Celtic thing. For me, it's a human thing, is you can find the humour in just about anything, and usually it's at the darkest moments.
Certainly, I think everyone let out that collective sigh of release in the bit in the safari park at the end, because that's exactly what certainly I needed. Watching
it's
it
a
there,
gag.
Just that break in it.
You need to. It's not just there to put. I don't like serious. Obviously, my background's theatre. I don't like it when you just put sugar on the pill. That annoys me. That's patronising bollocks. It has to come from the situation and from the characters, and it has to be reasonably credible. And I think it's more than reasonably credible that a youngster, when challenged by an adult in a safari park, would genuinely say, as was told to me, that's a true story, as was told to me, we're not going to touch your fucking lions. I think that's amusing, and I think it's very true, because as far as those kids were concerned, look, your lions are safe, we're not going to touch them,
So do you find that happens a lot? People will wander up and drop you a story and you'll work it in, or is it just, right?
Usually it's just, I just make it up. But every so often somebody will come up. The lad with the two knives at the end, that was a story told to me by Martin Compson. And I was telling him I was writing a thing called Neds, and he told me a story about a lad in Greenock who had taped two knives to his hands, and he challenged the other gang, and he took them all on because they couldn't knock the knives out of his hands. The minute he told me that story, it was in, because the image of that for me was perfect. It's what has become an extension of what. Is he an extension of the knives, or the knives the extension of him? and also how does he get out of the room and how does he get back home. You know what I mean? Honestly, that kills me. Every time I watch it, I'm like, there's an elephant in the room, guys. How does he get out of the house? And how does he get back in? And what if he needs a toilet? He's in real trouble, man. You know, that amuses me. I'm sorry, I've got a very sick sense of humour.
So, again, can I... the role that you play in that, I just think is...
yeah, quite right, honey.
I mean,
talk about the grandfather, your great granddad.
Just absolute scarcity in every manner. The way that you directed it, the way you lit it, your performance in that. How did you? Were you always going to play that role? Was it written with you in mind?
I was the B.
Tell us how that.
I was the B team, and we knew. Lenny and I both knew that if we had to, I would play the part. I was the cheapest, and I was available for a start. 'Cause I was around the set every day, so I could do the part.
Yeah.
We put in for 2 actors that we both thought would be great, and they couldn't do it through work commitments. So I stepped in. Lenny, quite rightly, was a bit concerned that maybe I was taking on too much, and the rest was an absolutely fair concern from your casting director. But doing it was a joy, because it's a game. It's just a game. I mean, I've murdered so many people in films. It's a game. It's just a lark, you know. And you've got to look at it that way, or you'll go insane.
Yeah.
So I had an absolute ball. Watching it, I don't enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't like watching it, because he's a deeply sad, broken, tormented human being. But in terms of when they turn over, you're only playing that guy for literally 2.5 minutes, and I never knew what he was going to do next.
Right.
Which, from an acting point of view, was great, and also I wasn't directing.
Yeah.
You know, when they turn over, I'm just an actor, and that's what I'm to trade. So it's brilliant. I get to be this lunatic with impunity. Nobody's going to come up and arrest me or lock me, you know, or lock me up or whatever. So the reason why acting is one of the greatest jobs on earth is you get to do things with impunity. I mean, I smashed a car to bits in a Ken Loach film called My Name is Joe, and as I was coming out, he smashed the car to bits. There's 2 Polish stood going. I mean, I'm sorry, how many people get to smash a car to smithereens with a baseball bat? And the Polish are going, and when you finish the lot, you smash that up really well. Well, anyhow. You know, you do it in any other area, any other avenue of life, you know, there'll be a consequence.
Yeah.
Avi Lang said there's nowhere in the world where someone can go and scream. And that stuck with me for years, because I thought, God, you're right. And as we become more technologically, if you can call it, advanced in the spine, and the entire globe is being watched, as it were. But it always stuck with me. It's like, God, there must be a place in the world where someone can go and just scream for whatever agony is inside them. And of course I found it, and it's called a stage.
Yeah.
You can scream on stage and people give you a round of applause for it. You can scream in a film and they go, well done. There's no place, honestly now especially, there's no other place on earth when you can go and scream. You can dive up the top of a mountain and somebody will clock you somewhere, and they've got their mobiles and they'll make a little call, even though it may be sympathetic. So the great thing about acting, and what we would then offer up to our young cast, is this is an opportunity for you to do things and not hurt someone, not harm yourself, not harm others. You got a little rubber knife, just make it look real. So they could use all the shit that they'd seen in their own lives, and they can do it as a game. And the great thing about drama is the game is once they've done it and they're exhausted by the physical process of doing it, they get to understand it a bit better. And I'm not playing, you know, sociologist on this one or child counsellor. But the bottom line is, as far as we can gather, most of our youngsters who were on the fringes of the gangs, the real gangs, were real kids. As far as we can gather, they've not partook.
And how did you?
They've stepped away from it because they played the game. And when you see a kid go down, you know it's just it's fake blood and it's special effects and all this kind of business. But when you go away from it, you realise in the real world that, well, if I do that with a knife, it ain't fake. It's not pretend.
Yeah.
So then I'd have to live with it. So drama really is a wonderful tool, particularly amongst kids who have issues, to just get it out of themselves in a protected environment. It's a kind of artistic padded cell.
Yeah.
You know?
So on that question then about kids being able to play out, if you like, in certain in the safety of that environment, it's an 18. So obviously
that's the censors. Because we've got knives. The censors were like, no, we will not negotiate. I tried. I mean, you know, we sent in emails and the rest. They were like, they just would not give any truck for that. Which again, I mean, the hypocrisy's staring you in the face. It's like, come on, guys, there's 15s where you're ripping people's heads off, but it's a superhero ripping someone's head off, or it's a werewolf, or it's whatever. They say that's okay, but the minute you present a certain version of reality with knives, they say no, that's going to encourage kids to leave the cinema and pick up knives, which I think is patently absurd, but that's the way the censor is, and I wasn't in a position to, I couldn't talk them round.
Right. But was it problematic from the funder's point of view? Because I can't remember the last 18 I saw at the cinema. They seem quite a rare thing.
Well, obviously they weren't too pleased because obviously they're going to lose money. Now Neds has been a massive success. I think it's the biggest 18 in a long time in the UK. So it's been a massive success in the UK financially. Yeah. We just broke the million mark on 70 prints. So the film cost 3.5 million. So that's $1 million given back to them in the UK alone. Yeah. And that's before we opened in the States and France and Australia and Scandinavia and the Middle East and all the rest of it. So they're very, very happy at how it's performed financially. But it would probably have done 4 or 5 times that if it was. To be honest, that's never been the concern because we'll never see a penny of it. Right. You know, that's film.
Right. One of the other things that, I mean, it was film of the year the other night on Film 2011 or whatever year we're in now. I read a review and called it the Scottish 400 Blows. What do you think about that? And are you happy with the way it turned out? Are you, Lenny? Are you happy with it? Is there anything when you watch it now would you change?
Oh Jesus, yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, I had to live with the damn thing. I had to cut it every single day. No, you're never happy with it, but you're glad you get away with it. You know, I mean, there's still bits in it I know are crap, but you just hope to God it'll work. You're never happy completely with a film. Well, no filmmaker I've ever met so anybody that is an asshole.
How did you get away from that kind of, I could be wrong when I say this, but there didn't seem to be a lot of stage school kids in there, unless they were really good actors. How did you,
we never used to do stage school.
How did you
I went round all the stage schools because it has been quoted that I didn't, and that's not true because I did. Yeah. I gave everybody a fair crack at the whip. If you were at stage school and you were good enough, you had a chance. I tried to see as many youngsters as we could. It was when we ran open days and we invited the genuine article to turn up that we got the ones that you see, but they weren't handpicked that way. It was just the way it happened. Yeah. But we did go to every drama school. We went round every youth club, and we spread our net.
We never actively, I mean, neither Lenny nor I would ever do such a thing. We never actively discriminated against. There's been a few people sort of, and they mean it as a compliment, like, yeah, there's no drama school. No, I would rather burn in hell than discriminate against a kid because he or she is from a particular background when they were lucky enough to get to drama school. To discriminate against them is equally as bad as to discriminate against any other kid. So I would never ever do such a thing. And we had a couple of kids who had gone to drama school. But effectively what we were looking for, regardless of background, whether they be middle class, upper class, working class, I couldn't care less. All we wanted was somebody who had a certain outlook and a certain element to their personality that when shot on this could project a certain something, be it danger, be it not danger, be it whatever. The worst thing that ever happens, in particularly if you look at your bollocks like Taggart and stuff like that, is they have an idea of what a hard man is like and how the hard kid walks into a room. It simply doesn't work that way. They don't come in grimacing. If you're a hard case, you don't need to grimace at nothing, and that's what they emanate. Yeah. The reason why certain people you will not mess with is I get a sense that son of a bitch would stab me and not give a monkeys. It doesn't matter if they're a little guy, a big guy, tough looking guy, soft looking guy. What you get from it is, I think you would do me in. Now, whether you are aware of that or not is another issue. So when it came to Lenny and I casting the film, it was very much just kids that were aware of that, not kids who had lived that experience, because God forbid that any of them would live that experience, but even kids that were aware of that was enough that would inform their performance.
So, what was your kind of...
I'll be the air conditioning going then. Hope you can last longer than me, because I'm boiling in here.
So, because you wrote this a while ago and you revisited, and what was the process of getting it from, timeline, the shoot, getting it edited? How long did it all take?
From the time I wrote it to when we shot it was pretty quick, because they gave us the money very quickly. And in fact, one of the biggest time lapse was between completing it, this was last April, and it being released in January this year. That was one of the biggest time lapses. In terms of writing it, it took me a lot longer than it should have done, because I was buggering off and doing acting jobs and stuff. So, and I'm the kind of writer that would do anything rather than write, like most writers. You know somebody's writing because their house is so clean. You know they're writing because you're writing, aren't you? How do you know that? Because your house is spotless. And I'm a type of writer that would clean other people's houses. That's how much I'll just prevaricate. When I actually write, I do it pretty quick, like very quick. When there's nobody else, I can bore to death with whatever, and I have to sit there and actually physically do it. I do it pretty quick.
And how do you approach because you're an actor yourself, how do you approach that on set? Because I read many quotes, particularly about the Magdalene sisters, but that said you kept a very loose set and everybody knew what they were doing, but it was very laid back, but controlled.
It's quite a bit fun.
But how do you do that?
You just don't have to be an ass. It's as simple as that. It's like running any place. If you're going to be an asshole, then surprise, people don't enjoy their work and they start falling sick and they don't want to come in. Simple as that. You just, you create a nice set, you treat people with respect, and you don't shout and bawl or do any of that nonsense. And more important for an actor when you're working with young, often inexperienced actors, is it should feel like fun. It shouldn't feel like I'm going to get seen by millions of people.
And is that those skills that you've picked up from other directors, or just would you like to be treated on set?
No, I picked it up from other directors, and I was a teacher for a long time in community theatre, and I taught at Glasgow University for a couple of years. And teaching has helped me more than anything, because in order to get a student to perform at the best, you want to keep them confident. You don't want to knock their confidence. And acting's 98% confidence, 2%, 1% skill, 1% maybe a bit of experience, maybe. But it's confidence. If an actor feels confident, they will produce to the best of their ability. But a director can knock an actor's confidence in a nanosecond, and some directors do. Some do it deliberately, some do it because they're not very good directors. And it doesn't just apply to directing, because you're top of the pyramid. So you can knock anybody. I mean, it's a very powerful position for the short time that you're shooting, and you can make people's lives misery very, very quickly if you so choose. And I've been lucky. I've never worked with that kind of asshole director. I've worked with good ones, but I've got mates that have worked with guys who are complete monsters, and everybody's miserable. And I don't think you'll get the best out of people when you do that. And apart from anything, I wouldn't want to be part of that. On an ethical level, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to bring people around and then start abusing them. And they're doing me a favour. They're showing up, the money's not that great, and you're putting them in stupid costumes, and you're asking, sometimes they're putting their neck literally on the line. And I'm not going to be hanging around wanting to criticise that. I would never do such a thing.
So is that how do you pick roles then when you're acting? Do you just look at the character and the script, or do you think
usually a director? It's usually a director. If I like a script, if I like the director's okay, then I'm more than happy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's what matters to me. And the money.
Because you've just finished
Please pay me.
Paddy Considine's one,
Paddy, we just did a film called Tyrannosaur, which hopefully will be here end of the year. Great film. Very, very good film.
And that was Paddy's debut, wasn't it?
It was his debut. Paddy won Best Director in Sundance, and myself and Olivia, it's a sort of two-hander. We won Best Actor. So we've got prizes. So if we've got prizes, you've got to come and see it. You've got your hand up already. He's not even asked you.
So go on, and we'll have some questions, and then we'll feedback. Go on.
Just say I really enjoyed the film, and I'm aware of your history of violence, because I saw you chipping Macbeth at the National.
Alright. God, you'd be worried, man. I was like, Jesus, I was like, blame him, I'm like, we just look alike.
And I like to me, it was almost like, it seemed like a kind of Kubrick homage going on with the fight scene on the bridge with Harvey's cheek to cheek. There was singing in the rain.
Oh yeah, I docked my cap to Stanley a few times in that film.
That was great. But the thing that was interested me, and I suppose I wonder about your funders and backers. I do a bit of writing too, and I use a lot of Scots, and it was great to hear Scots language being totally alive there, natural. It was great to hear that, and I wonder how does that work in the film world as it travels internationally?
The subtitle.
I know,
seriously, the subtitle.
I know we're watching Sweet 16, there has been a great debate because they had subtitles.
Oh, I've been subtitled, just about every film I've ever done, I've been subtitled. Seriously, they subtitle you. And the choice you make is dead simple. Is you'll get the commercial mob that say, if they would only speak English as it should be spoken and understood abroad, then you wouldn't have to subtitle. Now, the minute you say to a kid or an actor, be as close to your soul, but you're in a different context. Your life is a different context. That's all acting is. It's you in a different context. Things didn't work out the way your life worked out. So all you have to do is make a leap of imagination into thinking, well, okay, I wasn't brought up in such and such a way. I was brought up in such and such a way. So it's not like you lobotomize yourself or you take your heart out, your soul out. It's ultimately you, but like a Rubik cube, it's just shifted around. That's all acting is. If you then say to an actor, now do exactly that, just what you did, but instead of saying doon, say down. Instead of saying shop, say shop. And yet. In other words, bring your accent up to a more middle class kind of accent. The minute you do that, all that other beautiful stuff, bye-bye, it goes. Because the actor's too busy thinking about what he's saying, and I'm going to kick your head in. I really bloody well am. The minute you do that, what you had previous, which was, I'm going to kick your fucking head in, trust me, I'm going to kick it. That energy, or whatever you want to call it, when you go, whoa, that worked. The minute you say to an actor, now say it, just watch your diction. The minute you do that, bye-bye performance. It just goes. So internationally what happens, sorry to interrupt, but internationally what happens is, because you've made that choice, they will subtitle you. But I would rather be subtitled and you get the truth of their emotions than dilute their language, insult our own country. Because I don't think it's insulting to have us subtitled. I really don't. Because why should anybody understand a Glaswegian accent from Utah? Why should they understand us? We don't produce enough stuff that we could say to the Americans, but by God, we produced trillions of hours worth of television. Surely by now you must understand. The Scots' voice politically is simply not out there. So the fact that it's subtitled, as long as they see the truth of who we are as people, that I'd much rather have than we compromise their accents, and then you've got nothing.
Well, the film, the story is universal. That's a universal story.
Completely.
That we got there. I mean, watching a month or so, I watched that Gomorrah. The Italian
I know Gomorrah.
Tremendous film.
Yeah, beautiful.
You didn't need to speak that. To get the story. So
totally. I mean, some of the greatest theatre I ever saw, and I think Lenny saw them as well. The Mali Theatre, Leningrad. After 2 minutes, I couldn't bear hearing the simultaneous translation, so I binned the translation. And I understood every single moment of that drama. And it was in Russian, or Ukrainian, I believe. And I understood all of it. Not maybe every single linguistic nuance, but I understood it. I just couldn't bear somebody in a fairly bland, objective voice giving me the dialogue they were saying. I got it. And the greatest cinema I've ever watched, I rarely need the subtitles. The greatest theatre, the greatest art I've ever seen, I don't need subtitles. I look at Picasso, I don't need somebody there stood next to me telling me what Picasso was meaning when he did Guernica. I'm not saying it's not useful to have someone there if you want them. I don't need them. I can approach it by my own means and rights. And I think too much is made of particularly in our own country, because we're part of, we were the first colonised nation, The English one is basically, I'm a Scottish Republican, so that offends me deeply, politically. So politically, for me, it's vital that we give people the real voice, but we have to accept the international reality, which is they don't necessarily understand it.
Yeah.
And I've yet to have, I mean, we get rave reviews from Toronto, from the Variety, the Hollywood Reporter. I mean, raves off the Richter scale for Neds. And they watched it with subtitles. And not one of them complained. They were like, right, okay, we read it in subtitles because we understand that Scotland's a separate country. We have a different dialect, if not language, out with Old Scots and Gaelic, obviously. And they appreciated it. They took from it. And the subtitles helped them get through it, which, like I say, I don't have a problem with it.
Well, thanks for champions.
No problems, bro. My pleasure.
Because we did have Rob Buchanan here recently from Gregor's Girl and That Sinking Feeling. That was dubbed when it went to America.
Yeah.
And he sat and said exactly the same. He'd have preferred them to subtitle it than dub it. He was one of the few who really allowed him to dub it. You know, and it just seems bizarre.
Well, it's one of those things. Gregory's was made, build and they make it for money, but the Americans thought they would make more money out of it if it was dubbed.
Yeah.
When we did Trainspotting, me and Ewan Bremner were sat down by Andrew MacDonald, and Andrew said, okay, he was giving us all a lecture about our dialect, you know, and he went, okay, you two especially, talking to me and Ewan like we were kids, you two especially, watch this. And he played the first 20 minutes of Gregory's Girl, the dubbed version, and he said, that's what's going to happen to you two. In Trainspotting, that's what's going to happen. Unless you watch Addiction, you're going to end up with that. And of course you're sat there, and it's me and Ewan Bremner, you know, you're sat like that. Well, you've just dug yourself one big hole, because now we're going to go the other direction. You'll barely be able to understand us by the time we're fucking finished. I mean, don't dare tell us, you know, once you can start to act, you can tell us to do that kind of shit. But Andrew very much had in mind that Trainspotting was to make money and be international.
Yeah.
It's not an art. I love Trainspotting, but it's a pop video. It's an extended pop video. It's not a serious movie. But why the hell should it be? Cinema doesn't always have to be serious. But it was made with that intent. It was never meant, unlike something like Neds, which has a certain serious intent. I was willing to take the fact that we will not make anything like the money that Trainspotting made, but that's not the issue. I would rather somebody see that in 5 years from now and get something from it than the fact, or they pirate it or whatever the hell they do, and best of luck to them. I don't have any, as I say, I've never seen a penny of it anyway.
So on that, so is it easier for you to make films in Scotland than it would be to move anywhere else to take? Because I'm assuming it's a worldwide concern. You don't just take money from Scotland.
No. I mean, the main finance behind Neds was French and Italian, because Magdalene made money.
Yeah, but is it easy for you to be in Scotland?
It is for me, but I'm in a very, very fortunate position. I mean, I can make films anywhere because I've made films and they've worked.
Yeah.
That
helps. The awards,
they give you gongs and stuff, but it doesn't mean as much as when you get an audience that they like, because it's a business. They want to make money, and the fact that Magdalene made money and Neds is making money, then please God, they'll give me money to make another one. So I'm lucky in that respect. It's a lot harder for young Scots coming through now to make films because we just simply don't have the finances up here. That's the problem.
Okay. We'll open up for questions.
You mentioned the fact that the young actors were so surprised about teachers smoking. Did they react in a similar way, or was the theme that you were projecting throughout the whole film something that they could understand?
Yeah.
Did it really happen this way, or could they relate to things happening now?
I was shocked they related to all of it. I was waiting for the moments when they would go, wait a minute, was that really? There was one moment on the bridge when it got silly, because I like to give my actors as much room as possible to do their own thing. And they started doing this really silly chant, like they'd made it all up themselves. They spoke to one another, so they started going Gardy, and they all are going crew. And this was the biggest pile of bollocks I'd ever seen in my life. But I let them go through it. We didn't shoot anything. So finally I walked up to my lads, gathered them round and said, no, this is not some silly American, you know. They decided, I think they'd all been watching Braveheart or something, they thought it was going to be some big tribal thing. I said, no, okay, let's here's what happens, or here's what's going to happen in the film, is mock one another. And that was the only bit they went, well, slag each other, just have a laugh, slag each other. And then the minute he throws that bottle, the battle begins, which is the saddest part. And for me, what I like about that scene is that when you watch them slagging each other, it's like, Jesus, why don't you just, why can't you just stop there? Just keep slagging, have the laugh. You don't need the violence. You really don't. You're making all your stupid points, verbally, But that's how I remembered it.
So did their input help develop what was happening as well?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, obviously, I would always say to the actors, "You come up with anything better than me," or no, sorry, you come up with anything, fine, I'll shoot it. If it's completely off the wall, bugger it. Why the hell not? We'll shoot that as well. Because ultimately, if you're going to shoot the way that I shoot, which is kind of, you're looking for things, you don't try and pre-plan everything. The more an actor can just enjoy it and play around and do strange or wonderful or funny things, the better. The last thing you want to be doing as a director is to direct. You don't want to be running around going, no. You walk up to here, you look there, you think, oh, you're aghast. Now you walk, you don't want to do that. But then I've just worked with Steven Spielberg, and that's exactly what he does. So what do I know?
So on that question, how was the Warhorse?
That's what Steven does. Steven micro-directs. He will literally say, okay. Now the same thing, Peter, but look up to the right, then bring your eyes down. Then look, it's micro direction. The antithesis of everything I've ever done as an actor. It's Hollywood. It's not the European aesthetic. Yeah. But I loved it.
But do you ever walk on the set and go, yeah, I could go some of this? The big sets, the big budgets, the trailers. It's
never really impressed me. No, big sets have never really impressed me because that's all it is. It's just bigger. The principle's exactly the same.
Yeah.
When I was in Braveheart, we had a £2 million horse, and this thing was beautiful. You'd marry this thing. It was just gorgeous. and he strutted around, and he was cool, and he couldn't hit a mark, and they had to hit this mark for this shot, and he was the horse upon which the guy gets his head chopped off by Gibson, and this £2 million posh stallion just couldn't hit a mark, and you're stood there thinking, this is an $80 million movie, what you gonna do? And what they did was they got a stunt guy, they put the actor on the stuntman's shoulders, and they gave the stuntman a little bit of horse's mane, and the guy went and we all stood there, 4,500 of us, in an $80 million movie, watching a guy going and an actor's on his shoulders going, so blah, 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 blah. And he's underneath, or below him rather, there's a stuntman going and it was those were the moments that are perfect for any kind of wannabe filmmaker, because you realise it doesn't matter, you get 80 million, it all boils down to the same thing. Steven Spielberg, this film, I think it's about 100 million. Steven does the same as every other director. We've got half an hour. Okay, run over there, stand there, look up. Okay, and cut. That's a wrap. Film's film. It doesn't matter how much money you've got. The only difference is if you get more money, you can maybe repair it further down the line. But the bottom line is, you've got 10 hours to shoot something, and come the 9th hour, everybody panics. You've only got 1 hour left.
Yeah.
That's film. Doesn't matter how much money you've got.
Yeah. Any more questions, gentlemen? There?
I really enjoyed the film, and I enjoyed the banter between the kids, and I like the fact in the closing credits you had the photograph.
No, aye.
And the questions for the two Mullans, I think it was like a lot of sibling rivalry. Like you come up with the guys, I really like him, and Len go, no way, you're having him in my film. I went and got his jet, and like more than that, little. No, not like any fisticuffs or anything, no. Peace and love, right?
You bar me, man.
We agreed early on, the ones that because we were both looking for the same truth.
Right.
And we both knew the truth that we were looking for.
So you agreed that beforehand before starting off the whole process, Because I couldn't work with my siblings, it'd be like one big punch-up.
No,
there's loads of other siblings I'm in again here.
I'd beat him up.
No, we've never had a crossword ever in terms of shoot. There was one scene you wanted in that I had to cut.
No, it's a great scene, and it made it, for my money. It's still, if you get to read the script, we'll be selling that soon enough, I'm sure. It adds to the kind of brothers, because unfortunately in the edit, the two brothers story does get
gets lost.
It gets
Well, not lost, but it gets demoted.
Yes.
That's a bit of a shame because they were sort of working well together, you know what I mean? And if they
Yeah.
were brought like in the bunk above him, you'd want to get...
Again, it's
There's parts of that scene, hope I don't know if they're going to be in the DVD.
They'll be in the DVD, yeah.
They are beautiful. That was
Yeah.
A-Boy's first day on set, and I had tears in my eyes. I had those performances that were sublime.
Yeah.
And but it was a whole story that got lost, so they're scenes that had to get cut.
So it's like anything in a cutting room. You have to make choices,
Yeah.
and the great thing with DVD is the audience can decide when you made the right choice or the wrong choice. The truth is, already the film's on the 2 hour mark. I mean, if I'd kept in everything I would like to have kept in, it would have been 2.5, and it would have been too long. It would have been bye-bye movie.
Sure, yeah.
You would have had it's not as good an experience.
It's all the marketing bollocks and talk.
Well, I watched the 2.5 hour long version, you know, because I'd cut it, and realised it's like, nah, it's too long. And I don't mean too long that an audience can't take it. The drama just goes, and there's many would argue this is too long, and they could have a point, but I just couldn't find a way of cutting it any shorter than it is.
The between the kids was excellent, and
Aye.
the classroom scenes were sort of scarily real as well.
Yeah.
Like getting belted and
Aye.
mind going like that, just to win the teacher.
Aye, totally. The more they hit their thighs when you've done that, the better. Alright. I've done that one many times, man. Many times.
Cheers, thanks.
No problem.
Thank you. Gentlemen there?
When did you realise when you were making the film that you were on to a winner? When did it sort of come across that this is...
Oh, I never felt that, I'll be honest. No, I didn't. No, I'll be absolutely honest. The first time they saw it, they what they call a rough assembly, when your editor puts everything together before you start cutting it. And I just wanted to blow my brains out. It was an absolute pile of bollocks. It was 3.5 hours long. It was a mess. So no, I've never recovered for that first assembly. You never do. As I say, any filmmaker that says, "Oh yes, I knew very early on," I'm sorry, I don't trust. I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them, you know, or her, for that matter. You know, it's just you never get that comfortable, because as Lenny said there, that those scenes there. I mean, Lenny isn't aware, but that's like a knife to my heart. You know, I had to cut these scenes. I mean, he's not in that room. No, I mean, the bottom line is, I know that I had to cut stuff that in an ideal world I'd have kept. But the thing that happens when you cut a film is it gets a voice of its own. It starts off as your wee baby that you nurture and breastfeed and blah blah blah. Then a film ends up on a stage. It's like an adolescent. It won't do nothing that you want it to do, and that's the most amazing thing about when you're cutting a film, is it ends up with a voice all of its own, and it tells you, I don't want this scene anymore. You're like, no, you're one of the best scenes in it, and the film sort of says, no, you know you don't need me no more. I need to go, and they do, and they walk, and it kills you. Music's another one. There's scenes you've spent a lot of money to get orchestras or whatever, and you put music on it. And the film knocks it back, and I swear there's no other way to describe it. The film goes, no, don't want your music. Stick your music up your arse. You're like, oh, you've cost me 56 grand. I need you to like this music. And the scene says no. And then you try and change the music. The scene still says no, don't want your music. Then another scene says no, I'll take it. I'll. Honestly, it drives you nuts. It's an amazing experience. So you never sit back and go, oh yeah. That's when I knew it worked. You find out about 10 years later, when people, you know, if they're nice enough and they say, oh, I remember that, and you think, well, it could have been that bad, you know.
Thank you. Lady there?
I loved the film. I love the humour of it. I love the language. I think the humour fits simply because
It was a combination of two. The one was, you know, horrifying in the sense that it still goes on. The other was equally horrifying, the idea, well, we got a whole generation that maintain they never done that, you know. I mean, I read a story when I didn't do a lot of research for it, to be honest. But I remember in the Mitchell, I read a story about two kids who were watching a fight in Edinburgh, and it was a big boy fighting another lad. These kids were 9 and 10, and a fight between a 13 or 14-year-old, and they cheered on the wrong lad. As in, they cheered the one that got beat. And they were all stood in a circle going, fight, fight, fight. And one lad won over the other. The lad that won took exception to those two kids who had been jeering on his opponent, chased after the two kids and beat one of them to death with a brick on the pavement. And it happened in 1893. And that really, really hit me. That story could easily have been in the Sunday Mail tomorrow, and we'd all been horrified, and we'd all want the parents locked away. And
I think that's film is generating more debate today.
Oh, tons.
Because it's absolutely today's issue.
Or tons, and hopefully in a good way. A lot of the police in the violent reduction unit's been in touch with me and stuff. There's been the various debate amongst the chattering classes, if you like, but there's been debate also wider afield about this tribalism has been going on for hundreds upon hundreds of years. This is not a new phenomenon, which is another reason why I want to set it the 70s, as in this is not a modern day phenomena. This is something that has been going on for hundreds of years, and we really have to start looking at just now the debate is, as always, that it's the lock them up versus the so-called namby-pamby liberal brigade, and I think the lock them up lot will always play to the gallery and say, look, I say we just throw away the key. And when you see some of the acts that have gone on, you'd be like, yeah, and I'll be the one to throw that key away. Bottom line is, it doesn't work. It's not worked in 400 years. Why is it going to work in the next 5 years? You know.
I think your film, for me, opens up. It isn't black and white.
No.
There's so many social issues there, education,
Oh, completely.
literacy, everything.
Completely. The minute that the worst types of films of that genre, the gang genre, if they don't even bring in, I'm not trying to prescribe how they should write their films, but if they don't even bring in any of the outer orbit around that particular planet, if you like, then it's grossly irresponsible. That is gratuitous. Because to just suggest that these kids have just come out of nowhere and they just happen to be really evil and really violent that's offensive. I find that offensive. They asked me to do a film just before we started shooting Neds called Harry Brown, and I couldn't do it, and it was good money. They were asked that, and I got to beat up Michael Caine for 3 days, and I said no, I can't do this because this is fascistic nonsense. This is vigilantism. This is all, you are simply presenting kids who are so evil. Of course you're going to shoot them in the back of the head. The fact that they bear no resemblance other than their voices and their costume, they have no basis in reality. They're just evil kids, which then allows you to go, well, let's shoot them in the back of the head, cinematically speaking. But the truth is, if you were to even just look at a little bit of their lives, I'm not saying that by looking at their lives it explains this, I'm not saying any of that, but that movie, its primary thrust of that film was absolutely, totally, unashamedly fascist. It was, give the old people guns, that will sort the problem out. And it's like, please. I mean, the bloodbaths around the old folks' homes in Glasgow would just be, it'd make Libya look like Disneyland. It would be like, give pensioners guns. Well, there's the answer. Every pensioner runs out. I don't want them. It's insane.
What I thought was interesting as well, Peter, was that there was no kind of spark, there was no tipping point. It just kind of began to wash over him over time, and because I've seen so many Hollywood films where that happens and all hell breaks loose. Come on, it's more than that.
It is, and it doesn't work that way. It's like all of us when we're teenagers. Things change so quickly, and you don't always know why. And sometimes the kid themselves don't know why. I mean, why do you see the photographs of the wee kid? He's at primary 7. It's the wee pretty face, and then they show you the other photo of him lying in a street somewhere, junked up his head. He's OD'd on bad heroin. All in the space of 2 years. What made him take to the heroin? We all like to simplify things, particularly in regards to our kids. Because we'd all like to understand. But if one oversimplifies, then obviously you defeat the purpose. You may as well not even examine the issue in the first place.
Any more questions before I round off? There you go.
Just on that subject, the scene that I really loved in I loved all the films, the scene that I really loved was the scene where you think he's going to stab his dad and he ends up cutting him.
Aye.
And I think that presents exactly what you're saying. But for me, that says parent.
Yeah, big time.
Is that a big part of the message that
Oh, big time. I mean, the one thing I realised very early on in writing it was you can't say, and I'm an old-fashioned kind of Marxist, and society is to blame for a great deal. The one thing you can't say in regards to this particular issue, you can't just turn around and say society is to blame. It's such a cocktail of family life, one's own personality, one's peers, education. I mean, there's so many different influences, but one of them is definitely role models.
Absolutely. police and all.
And if you're in an environment as they were in that time and still is to this day, really, if all you're seeing around you is violent men, be it police, be it priests, be it teachers, be it whatever, I'm not saying you will then automatically take to violence yourself, but if you are predisposed for whatever reasons that may be, then you're far more likely to go down that road than you would down other avenues.
Absolutely, and the whole, I was very surprised at how much of an emphasis was an education film. I wasn't expecting.
Aye.
But of course it makes sense.
Yeah.
And we were just speaking about it, and it really should be something that every teacher should watch in teacher training.
All right.
It should be, because,
Yeah.
because that's the little bit that's the gap, you know, in
Aye.
terms of helping, not all teachers, but teachers that
No.
understand that actually what they do in the classroom and how they tackle the same issues as their siblings, for example.
Yeah.
is such a
Oh, it's
big
massive.
impact on how
It is massive.
label
Yeah. Well, a lot of teachers forget. I mean, I never taught in schools. I taught in community centres and prisons and the like. But obviously I've got a lot of school teacher mates. And like all of us, you get into a job after 10, 15 years, you get a little bit, you know, jaded, shall we say. And they do oftentimes tend to forget that to that little 12-year-old, you're still Mr. So-and-so. And that Mr. So-and-so stays with that 12-year-old till that 12-year-old's 62. Everybody remembers Mr. So-and-so, or Miss So-and-so, or Mrs. So-and-so. And I think teachers, understandably, get a bit tired, if you like, and a bit done in by the whole, you know, what goes on in their working lives. But they do have a massive influence. Aye. No, I agree. I think they should all watch it. I would agree with that. I won't argue against that one. Or they should buy the pirate. Or not buy the pirate. Actually, teachers know a name, they all buy the pirates.
Just to finish off, if we can go down the line, starting with Lenny, what did you learn on this film? What are you taking away from it?
What did you learn?
No, that you can get great performances from youngsters if you give them enough space. And I mean, we had tried that in Magdalen to a certain extent. We got great performances in Magdalen, don't get me wrong. They were even surpassed in this one, and they were given slightly more space, and it's a great way of working. So I suppose I learned that it's a great way to work.
Excellent. Peter?
No, I got along with Lenny on that one. It was the seeing how much the kids changed in the course of the shoot, how they. And it's unfair to my adult actors who were also, I think, brilliant in the film, because they had to kind of come down a bit, if you like, to let the kids shine, as it were. And so it was a kind of thankless task for the adults. But in terms of what Lenny says there about for youngsters, just by giving them enough space and enough confidence, then you can get that.
Again, I think for me, you couldn't really want with a better cast and crew. So the thing I took away was just the pleasure the kids got from it as well. As you say, every day, the kids literally ran onto the set. They were so excited, and they all gelled over the kind of course. The first couple of weeks of them were just kind of, just really natural. There was never any kind of hassle or any bad vibe. It just seemed to be a really nice, easy flow. And I think just even seeing the kids over the last few weeks since the film coming out, I mean, they're just through the roof with excitement about it, and it's a huge thing for them all, you know. And they're all, it's really nice. The other thing I think is really nice is a whole kind of circle of friends now that have built up out with it. It's like the kind of the huge cast, all most of them still keep in touch. It's a pretty big circle, and it's like a social thing almost as well, you know. So it's affected their lives. I mean, if they don't do another film, they've done Peter's film, and that's them. It's fantastic. That's great. That's what the most pleasure I got. Plus taking the pictures.
Excellent. Can you put your hands together for
Thanks.